You're out in kind of the rural Wisconsin. I'm here in the city. The election's coming up. There's a lot of things happening. COVID-19, economy, people losing jobs. A lot of things are just upended a lot of people's lives. And this election has become really front and center for a lot of people. But a lot of people out there saying, why should I vote? I don't like either candidate. Or you might hear people in Milwaukee, especially in the black communities, that say they come to Wisconsin because we're a pivot state, and then they tell us all the right things and say, we're going to take care of you. And then they get elected 4 years later, nothing's changed. And they say, why should I vote? A lot of people stereotype the rural areas just as much as they stereotype the urban areas. They kind of put us in one big box. But you're out there and you work with the Wisconsin Farmers Union.
People are really struggling in rural Wisconsin, and there's a lot of pain. 500 dairy farms went out of business last year. I think there's a lot of sense of cynicism and the fact that neither party is working for us.
And people out there in the media telling them, and you got to vote. It's your power. And they're like, I have not been heard. What do you say to those people?
First, I just start by honoring the way they feel and their anger, their pain, their cynicism, because it's real and it's true. There's been a lot of pain that's been presided over by both parties. And I think if you take an honest look at this political situation, it does look like the folks with the most money have the largest voices. How do we have these conversations about voting? And I would say it starts by listening to people and not by lecturing them that voting is important for XYZ reasons, but really asking them what's important in your life. Who's someone in your life who you love who might be impacted by this election? And it turns out that's really where the power of the conversation begins. When someone starts opening up and sharing an experience that had emotional weight for them. And the reason that's important is because they start connecting the dots about why does this issue or why does voting connect to their own personal life. You hear all the time from people, we need to listen to each other more. Well, okay, how do we do that? And it's our view that you do it just by doing it. You start by listening to a stranger in the same way that you might listen to a friend. You don't respond by showing judgment or by telling them they're wrong. You respond by showing them curiosity and asking them why and exploring that more. That really allows the conversation to open up in a way that can be really transformative. And you can learn a lot about people, who they are as a human being. These conversations are really the opposite of Twitter, where instead of calling people out and telling them they're wrong, it's really about listening and starting with empathy.
I mean, I feel the same way. I think it also affects what people think about voting, right? Maybe that a lot of the cynicism, the skepticism comes from what they see on social media. I mean, also what they see in the communities, but I think social media amplifies that.
Voting is a first step in the direction to making change. It's not the last step. The first thing we can do is vote for someone whose values most reflect our own. But then at the end of the day, if that person gets into office or not, the next thing we do the day after they're elected is we organize with our neighbors and we find out what the problems are that we're experiencing in our own neighborhoods, and we find a way to develop our own solutions and find our own voice.
I want to ask you, one of the things I've noticed across the country in all the states is like this divisiveness between rural and urban. So you're out there in areas that most people in Milwaukee don't know about, and a lot of people have preconceived ideas on both sides. What would you tell somebody in the city about what's going on in Chippewa Falls?
I would say rural America, rural Wisconsin it's not monolithic. It's not just one thing. There's actually a lot of diversity. It's not easy to see when you drive down a county road. There's racial diversity, there's economic diversity. And I think COVID is really exposing a lot of the cracks in the system, both for urban communities and rural communities. Rural broadband is really something that a lot of people out in these parts of the state struggle with. It really holds us back from sharing in some of the prosperity that our economy has. Healthcare, that's one of the big challenges for rural communities. Here in Dunn County, we don't even have a single ICU bed in the entire county. Across the U.S., 90% of hospital closures have been in rural areas. The challenges are very similar, I think. They're different, but similarly felt by people in both communities, rural and urban. But I really believe in the power of conversations. And I think the more we can create opportunities for people in Milwaukee and people in rural Dunn County to talk to each other and hear each other's stories and to see that they're swimming in the same water.
Our issues are pretty much the same, and there's no need to have this weird divisiveness between the rural and the urban, that we're both needed to make Wisconsin better. Maybe having a tailgating together, right? Maybe that's how we do it.
Well, I think that's very profound for you to say, because food is one of the common denominators in all of our lives.
Youth get to see what's grown out there and get a taste of some really good food, and to start with there and have some locally made beer from all over Wisconsin, and maybe that's a start.
I think we should do it. I think we just made a plan here.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Tarik. It's really nice to meet you and talk with you.
Nice meeting you too.